Okay. Okay, go ahead, Brian. I'll do the
Thanks.
that's one.
I just thought somebody was maybe either asking me a question
No,
or
it's
heckling me, which is
no,
also which is allowable in my books, but apparently it was just
no.
having on their thing. Yeah, so I want to talk us through today a couple of related matters arising from that sort of introductory look at some of the main themes of the present moment. And the first, of course, is the Monroe Doctrine. Since it's in the air, since President Trump has invoked it, we need to understand what the Monroe Doctrine is. A doctrine developed from a statement made by President James Monroe um, um, in December 2nd, 1823. And basically, what Monroe was really staking out in the early stages of the American Republic was a place for America as a player in the world of great powers or big states at the time. Of course, the United States gained its independence in the late 18th century. So by the 1820s, some 40 years or so later, it was still a minor player and it was trying to carve out its place. And it, the sort of position that Monroe took was that the United States had the right to intervene in this hemisphere against the activities of the traditional great powers, the colonial powers, Spain, France, and Great Britain in particular. And of course, the up and coming powers on the European continent, particularly Germany. And out of the Monroe Doctrine, which was further elaborated um, uh, later in the century um, by FDR, not by FDR, by Theodore Roosevelt as the Roosevelt Doctrine, the notion developed purely on the side of the Americans and only reinforceable by American force that the United States had this sort of autonomous right to intervene in this hemisphere. However, whether or not this thing is made out of whole cloth and pulled out of the air, the extent to which, as I've suggested, that you can use force to enforce it suggests its validity or it's certainly not its legality, but its existence. And if we look at the history of U.S. intervention in this region, which I can't obviously go into great detail to elaborate, but I'll just call some countries, and we can maybe in our conversation get back to what each of those countries means. Argentina in the 1970s, Bolivia in 1971, Brazil in 1964, Chile in 1973, Cuba on more than one occasion, and we'll come back to that. The Dominican Republic in 1965, Guatemala in 1964, Haiti, and I want to come back to Haiti as well, because many of us know about the interventions in Haiti in more recent times, but the 1915 to 1934 intervention in Haiti is extraordinarily important. Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, and of course, Venezuela. The sordid history of US intervention in the Americas is well known and usually ends in not a particularly good way for the countries which have been the subject of this intervention. A classic case, which most people don't really know very well, is the 1915 to 1934 occupation of the sovereign independent country of Haiti, which of course Haiti has a very special place in the history of the African diaspora and indeed in the history of Latin America, because it is the first Latin American country to gain independence, the second country in the hemisphere, and the first to abolish slavery decisively. And the US intervention in Haiti was in many ways catastrophic. The Haitian economy and political system had suffered tremendously in prior years, in part because of the indemnity which was paid to France for France having owned Haiti and being expelled from Haiti, but Haiti having to survive in a global imperial world, having to pay indemnities to France in order to buy and sell things on the international market. So because of all of this unrest, the United States intervened in 1915, largely at the behest of what is today Citibank, and essentially took the gold out of Haiti and deposited it at Citibank in New York, and ultimately ran Haiti out of Citibank in New York. There are more details which I cannot go into here. The years 1950 to 1934 reintroduced the right of foreigners to own land in Haiti. One of the greatest things that the Haitian Revolution accomplished was that uh, foreigners could no longer own land, because that was why slavery was, and that was why the war against slavery was. Well, the Americans returned the right of foreigners to own land in Haiti, literally destroyed the peasant economy, because the peasants survived on their crops and their pigs in particular. And by getting rid of the pigs and getting rid of the crops, then they had people who are impoverished and can be used for day labor on sisal and sugarcane and what else have you. In other words, whereas Haiti had moved in the direction of an autonomous peasant economy, albeit with a lot of troubles, largely stemming from the indemnity, it was returned to a traditional dependent monocrop type of semi-colonial economy. And of course, the Americans brought with them Jim Crow racism. They brought with them uh, a reinstitution or a strengthening of the hierarchy that had existed in Haitian society, with mulattoes on top and blacks underneath. And this lasted for all of the period between 1915 and 1934. Um, and I just mentioned Haiti because this is just one example. And there are extraordinary details that we could go into, the amount of people who died fighting against the American occupation in two revolts, the Caco revolts, and as well the sheer cost of the American presence. They built a couple of roads and they built a couple of bridges, but the cost to the economy and to the direction of Haiti, to the soul of Haiti, was tremendous. Um, if we take ourselves to the beginning of the 20th century, we can think of the world as a colonial, um, an entirely colonized world, with the exception of a few states. Um, and if we go back to 1884, when the conference in Berlin divided Africa among the colonial powers. By the end of the century, the world is a colonial world. In 1902, W.B. Du Bois, the African American thinker and writer, wrote his famous Souls of Black Folk, in which he says the famous line that the most important thing in the 20th century is the color line. And of course, by color line, he's referring to the divide between the colonizing powers, white, and the rest of the world, non-white. And this is where I want us if we think about the world at that point in time, this is the world in which Cuba is fighting for its independence. And Cuba fights in two important independence wars in the 19th century. And in the second of these, at great human cost, to establish an independent Cuba. And in the second of these independence wars, um, at the very end of the century, they are on the verge of victory against the Spanish, because of course the colonizing power of Cuba was Spain. They are about to defeat the Spanish when the United States enter the war, purportedly on the side of Cuba. But the real aim of their entrance into the war is actually to, in effect, snatching defeat of the Spanish from the jaws of victory. Cuba gains its independence, but it is a crippled independence. Um, and this is captured in the Platt Amendment. The Platt Amendment is the outcome of the U.S. intervention. So the U.S. intervenes on this, saying they're intervening on the side of the Cubans, but the real aim is to establish their hegemony over the country. The key features of the Platt Amendment, which is the amendment that the U.S. placed on Cuba, gave the United States a right to intervene in Cuban affairs. Cuba could not enter into treaties without the U.S. Cuba could not incur any debt except that which could be paid with existing revenues. And Guantanamo Bay, which we know very well in Jamaica, was ceded to the United States. Cuba did not have the right, I'm sorry, and the US had the right to intervene in Cuban affairs. That is to say, if they didn't like whatever policy the Cuban government sought to do, they literally had the right, constitutional right, to intervene, to tell them, no, 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 you can't do that. You must do this. Um, um, so I just want to draw a line between Platt as the way in which Cuba was defined by the United States at the turn of the century, the Berlin Conference that divided Africa among the European powers. I should add that this is a moment of peak Jim Crow in the United States, in which black people are subject to an existence in many respects very similar to slavery. And we don't have to go into detail. This is segregation, but this is the worst moments of it. Lynching, etc., are on the rise. And this is also, interestingly, the height of the eugenics movement at the level of science, in which the eugenicists are arguing that black people, people of color, Asians are inferior by virtue of some crazy notion of not genes at the time, but of shape of skull or some madness. The concept of independence, of sovereignty for small nations, is a pipe dream of only the most imaginative colonials. The United States entered the independence struggle late, the Cuban independence struggle late, but managed to not only control the direction of Cuba, but was able to buy into the estates, the sugar estates, purchase and build much of the industrial capital that Cuba had in the middle of the century, before the war and in the middle of the century. And it was this state worse than colonialism in some respects, because you're supposed to be free, but you're not free, that the generations of Cubans chafed under, and after World War II began to organize in different ways to end this American control of their country. And so that takes us to 1959. And I know I'm moving rapidly and making big leaps and jumps over historical periods. But if we're to understand what happens in January 1959, which is the revolutionary triumph of the 26th of July movement, we can only understand it in light of this history of the 20th century, in which Cuban independence was thwarted and in which the United States literally took over Cuba. Puerto Rico was a genuine colony, and Cuba was an independent country, but which was a colony, and ran it in its own interests. So when the revolution came to power in 1959, the United States fully conceded that a revolution had happened, but revolutions had happened in Cuba before, and that these people would bow in much the same way as Cuba had sort of fit into the world of American enterprise and American state interests. But this was not to be. Um, um, when the revolutionary government in 1959 to 60 moved to nationalize lands because of the poverty of the rural population, the United States moved against Cuba with sanctions. When the United States, and assumed that the sanctions against sugar exports, for example, which struck at the heart of the economy, that the Cuban government would yield and abandon its policies of land reform, and the Cuban government didn't yield. The U.S. then nationalized, then sought to put restrictions on Cuban energy, something which we shall come back to very soon again. And the Cuban government instead responded by nationalizing the petroleum companies and the um, energy producing aspect of its economy, which was US owned. So, what we saw was the very opposite of the compromises and concessions that had led to Platt half a century before, and a refusal of the Cubans to grovel at the feet of the Americans. If Cuba in 1902 was a vassal state of the US, the January 1959 revolution was the attempt to assert an independence which had been forfeited and compromised in 1902. You cannot understand Cuba unless you put yourself in that window of 1959 to the Bay of Pigs invasion and to the Cuban Missile Crisis and what was happening in that country. It was like a boxing match, but instead of the Cuban boxer reeling every time the Americans threw a blow, they responded with their own blow. Now, this was possible because of a number of things. It was, first of all, possible because the level of national mobilization and support for the revolution was unprecedented. Um, the revolution had enemies, but it had more friends. And this was a problem that the Americans faced. And the second factor was that there was the USSR. And the USSR provided a critical source of both sales for Cuba's single most important product, which was sugar, and also for oil, which Cuba did not produce, and which was critically required. So what saved Cuba from abject defeat in 1960 was the existence of the Soviet Union. But I just wanted very quickly to read from, hello? Yeah, I just wanted to read very quickly from a document that I have here somewhere hiding on my desk, which was the formal US position at the time of the Cuban crisis of 1959-1960. This is a memorandum that some people in this room I know. I saw you, Anton, and a couple of other people. But I think it is a memorandum that is worth reading again. It is a memorandum from um, L.D. Mallory, who is the Undersecretary of State in the State Department, to Mr. Rubottom. It's a secret memorandum, and the subject is called The Decline and Fall of Fidel Castro. Or, sorry, The Decline and Fall of Castro. And I read it word for word. Salient considerations respecting the life of the present government of Cuba are: one, the majority of Cubans support Castro. Two, there is no effective political opposition. Three, Fidel Castro and other members of the Cuban government espouse or condone communist influence. Four, communist influence is pervading the government and the body politic at an amazingly fast rate. Five, militant opposition to Castro from without Cuba would only serve his and the communists' cause. Six, the only foreseeable means of alienating internal support is through disenchantment and disaffection based on economic dissatisfaction and hardship. If the above are accepted or cannot be successfully countered, it follows that every possible means should be undertaken promptly to weaken the economic life of Cuba. If such a policy is adopted, it should be the result of a positive decision, which would call forth a line of action which, while as adroit and inconspicuous as possible, makes the greatest inroads in denying money and supplies to Cuba, to decrease monetary and real wages, to bring about hunger, desperation, and overthrow of government. The principal item in our economic quiver would be flexible authority in the sugar legislation. This needs to be sought urgently. All other avenues should likewise be explored. But first, a decision is necessary as to the line of our conduct. Would you wish to have such a proposal prepared for the Secretary? I think that captures, in a nutshell, the policy of the United States towards Cuba in 1960, as it captures, in a nutshell, the policies of the United States to Cuba this week. I should add that the policy to overthrow Castro was only one of a suite of regime overthrow strategies that the US has used in this hemisphere. We can think, first of all, of an approach which was used against Chile, Brazil, Argentina, Guatemala. You work with institutions internally who are opposed to the government, particularly the army, to consolidate support. You use the inevitable weaknesses in dependent semi-colonial economies. If the main export is copper, manipulate the markets to reduce its price so that the country is suffering. If the main foreign exchange earner is tourism, then launch a destabilization campaign telling US and European tourists that the place is dangerous. Keep everything undercover and try at all costs not to show the State Department's hand. Create unrest. If the country becomes ungovernable, then sadly and unfortunately, the military will have to enter to restore peace and preserve life. The second, I would call, so that's one suite of options. The second suite is what I'd call the first Cuban option, used in modified form in Nicaragua, where the government and its forces are too popular and already armed, but where there is a strong opposition, arm the opposition, maintain a fig leaf of distance between them and the State Department, and invade. This failed in Cuba at the Bay of Pigs, Playa Giron, but wore down the Sandinistas economically and militarily in order to construct an opposition that was able to actually win in the polls. So you have a frontal option, military option, and a military option which serves a secondary purpose. The second Cuban option, which is the one we're actually looking on, after the failure of the Bay of Pigs, is in L.D. Mallory's secret note, or in a comment Nixon made to Kissinger about Chile, that they should make the economy scream. What saved Cuba was A, the Soviet Union, and B, a network of goodwill and solidarity that Cuba built over 60 odd years. And here we talk about, Cuba is not just like a recipient of Soviet aid or when up to the end of the Soviet Union in 1990, 1991. But Cuba is intervening in the world in unprecedented ways for a small state, creating friendships, creating solidarity, building solidarity. And I need not mention all of these, but I should mention some. Cuba's help in medical and disaster assistance. Um, to me, the most outstanding single example, although there are hundreds and hundreds of them, was the Cuban intervention in West Africa during the Ebola outbreak, when everyone was afraid to go and the Cubans were present. Cuba's uh, the Cuban brigades present in the earthquake in Haiti. They were first on the scene. I mean, if you look on Haiti and Cuba, it's even nearer to Cuba than it is to Jamaica. The eye clinics, which many people in Jamaica have benefit from, um, are again as well as of course the training of hundreds, thousands of doctors, medical personnel from Africa, from the Caribbean, from all over the world, indeed, in Cuba. Um, at the top of the list for me, despite these exemplary, sterling acts of solidarity, was the Cuban defense of Angola at the time of independence in 1975, and the Cuban defeat of the South Africans at the tank battle at Cuanavale, Angola in 1988. What that defeat did, and most people acknowledge this, is that it ended South Africa's dream of having a sort of military dominance over Southern Africa that would protect it internally as well as reach out externally to control its neighbors. And that defeat ended those hopes and laid the groundwork for the release of Mandela and the end of apartheid as we know it. South Africa is not perfect today, but apartheid ended, and the Cubans played a significant role in that victory and in the fight against the South Africans. For Jamaicans, there are the beloved Cuban schools that have provided training grounds for multitudes of students over the decades, hundreds of doctors who not otherwise have been able to pay for an education and were trained in Cuba, as well as Cuban doctors who have helped the Jamaican and nurses who have helped the Jamaican health system, and Cubans who have been present at every major disaster since the 1970s, ever faithful and ever sure. The moment is now, however, a different one. The present US government is no longer interested in the rules based order. And that rules, and I'm not making a case for the rules based order being anything but very imperialist in many respects. However, it allowed a system of norms to predominate, including the introduction of the right to self-determination of nations and human rights. Going back to the UN Declaration of Human Rights of 1945, anytime it's right there on the web, is always useful to remember when these people are shooting boats in the water and are intervening and extracting presidents of a country. The present US government advances what it considers an America First policy, but it is not only one that disregards basic international law, the breaching of a country's sovereign boundaries, the brutal capture of its leader, but its own military laws, including the blatant and bloody shooting of unarmed boats in the Caribbean Sea, where policies of interdiction, arrest, and trial have been practiced for decades successfully, where drug running is suspected. But finally, and perhaps most notably, if not most egregiously, the personalization of foreign policy, where illegal decisions, for example, the seizure of oil tankers, are then turned over, or so it would appear, to the president, who may decide on his royal whim how these resources on his own ledger and at his own leisure might be distributed and spent. Let us be clear. The intention of Rubio, Trump, and the US government is to starve Cuba, to cause hunger, malnutrition, and death, to starve them until they beg for food and allow the old landlords of Havana living in Miami to return after a 60-year absence. Perhaps they hope that a section of the army will cut a deal and break with the Cuban Communist Party. Perhaps they hope that the entire nation will be so weak from starvation that they will simply fold. However you imagine it, I propose that it is anti-human. There are no laws of war that permit this, and Cuba is not at war with the United States. For the Caribbean states, this is a time of decision making, or in Jamaican parlance, a time when things come up to bump. Caribbean states, particularly CARICOM, more than almost anywhere else, understand the sacrifice that Cuba and Cubans have made for them over the years. They must find a way to unite and in one voice demand an end to the inhuman embargo against the Cuban people. This is 2026, not 1902. The majority of the American people in every poll over the last 4 months have opposed the illegal and inhuman policies of their government in the Caribbean. Every year, relentlessly and reliably, an overwhelming majority of the countries in the world condemn the US blockade of Cuba and demand normal relations. Mexico has found the wherewithal to send emergency supplies to Cuba. The Caribbean must do the same or face the verdict and condemnation of history. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Wow, that does give us a lot of information. I, when you're speaking about Haiti, I it reminded me of something that I had read because they said that um, when Papa Doc was, doing what he was doing in Haiti, the US didn't care, that he was doing what he was doing to his people. And I heard we're at JFK, during JFK's regime, he was one who said that one of the reasons why he actually liked Papa Doc, or rather he didn't really try to change anything, is because Papa Doc was staunch anti-communist. And that was basically in relation to Cuba, because he didn't want to see another Cuba in this hemisphere. So he would rather have Haiti and what was happening there. That's just an aside, but I remember reading that. And just before I leave Haiti, to me, it, Haiti seems to have become a situation where it's really it's almost next to slave labor. I've seen where presidents have suppressed any increase in the minimum wage for years, so that Haiti they are almost forced to work for a very low wage, and it's no wonder that the situation there has spiraled to what it is today. But that's just something that I remember since you brought up Haiti. Um,
Yeah, yeah, no,
Go
I
ahead.
mean, I agree with your comment, and just to say that this Haiti situation is obviously very, very complex. We must always keep our eye on the 19th century
Yeah.
history of Haiti
Mhm.
and what that starving of the country did. But we see that a lot, but we don't see the 1915 to 1934 occupation sufficiently. And that I think is critical in understanding. the situation that the majority of people were in after that, but also what brought Papa Doc to the fore. But that's another story.
Yes. The other thing too, when you in terms of Venezuela, Venezuela, as we know, was one of the main providers of fuel to Cuba. So with that situation where, the attack on Venezuela and so on, that really has increased the situation in Cuba where their fuel supply has basically been cut off. I saw recently, I don't know if it's true, that Russia is planning to send or has a ship on the seas heading to Cuba. Have you heard anything like that?
I've heard the same story myself. I haven't, it has been confirmed to me at any rate. But the point is that they will have to run the US gauntlet. It's going to be difficult. And if they can do it, well, I'm great. And any country that at this stage will provide Cuba under normal conditions of commercial sale with fuel, and the chances of Russia getting through are perhaps greater because the United States may not want to sink a Russian ship. Um,
Yes.
but it's a very tricky time. It's a very hard time for Cuba. So therefore, the question is international. What can we do? I mean, international solidarity is obviously one thing, to let our voices be heard. That this is just wrong. It is wrong. It is against humanity. Let us put it at that level, right? I mean, forget the argument about regime, right? The United States supports Saudi Arabia, which is a regime that goes and kills its opponents and grinds their bones into dust.
Hmm.
The United States has great relations with Vietnam, which is a country with a communist government, which they fought a war in which 3 million Vietnamese died and 50,000 other Americans died. But they can find a way to trade with Vietnam. And of course, with China, with all of the great power competition, they can exist with them. What is the problem with Cuba? Cuba is an anomaly. It is supposed to be a colony, it is supposed to be a little boy, and it refuses to do that, right? And therefore, I mean, they've been trying to teach Cuba a lesson for almost 70 years now.
Um, what do you think of the fact that Florida, where the Cubans are, and they always support the Republicans because they are the Republicans at least have been, what their policies have been anti-Cuba. Um, and the elections coming up, not just the midterms, but the next the presidential election. Cuba has always been a very important state to win. Do you think that, well, how do you think that is factoring into what they're doing now?
Well, obviously, the role of Florida is huge in Republican politics and therefore by implication in US politics. The extent to which the sort of Republican hold on Florida could be broken would be a big step in the direction of some normalization of relationships with Cuba. Just normal, not you don't have to be friendly, but you don't have to
Mhm.
be trying to destroy them. And that, of course, is always a factor which needs to be considered. Somebody has up a question here which asks, what can people do? I mean, it seems to me that one of the things that we can do is send food to Cuba. We're not so hard. I mean, Cuba, the minute anything happens in Jamaica, um, Cubans arrive here with supplies and with people. Um, any crisis, uh, and we can't send condensed milk. We can't send yam and cocoa. There's got to be a way in which we can show that, return some of that solidarity to the people of Cuba. These are our brothers and sisters.
Yes, totally agree. The floor is open for anyone who wants to, either make a comment or ask a question. If you're making a comment,
Hello.
we just like you to keep it
Hello.
short.
Hi,
Hello?
can you
Hello.
hear
My
me?
name is.
Wait, just a minute, just a minute, just a minute. I was just saying, if you have a comment, just please keep it short, but preferably we want questions. So if you put your hand
I
up,
have a
we'll
question.
recognize you. Okay, I see your
My
hand up.
hand is up.
Please.
Yes.
Go ahead. Go
Thank
ahead.
you. Thank you, Professor. Thank you for being here. Question is, are we really muzzled in the Caribbean? Recently, I heard former Prime Minister Bruce Golding. He was doing a radio interview, and he said that he would encourage Prime Minister Holness to be careful with what he says, because you can have a repeat of Venezuela in Jamaica if you find yourself not in good favor with the President of the United States. Are we muzzled? And maybe that applies to you too, maybe where you are.
Well, I can speak for myself that I've just said what I've said. I've stated my position on these people in power here as clearly as I can, that they are wrong, that they're absolutely wrong, that I think their politics is despicable. But that is a question of in relation to international affairs. The question is, you know, how is it that you can find a way to trade with regimes which are not only very different from your own, very different from your own, but whom many of them have communist parties in charge of their countries. Yet you can't find a way to trade with Cuba, you know. So I mean, I read to your point though. These leaders have to find themselves and have to think about history. And they also have to think about the fact that internally in their own countries, supporting Cuba is not an unpopular thing that is going to put them in the bad books of their own people. So they're
Sorry, Brian.
You're muzzled.
No,
I'm sorry.
I
You're
did it.
muted. You're muted.
I did it by mistake. I was trying to
Oh,
close
okay.
somebody. Let me find where you are. But I'm gonna ask the persons, please. I'm hearing a lot of muttering on your mic. Please keep your mics closed until you are called on. Just a second, Brian. Let me just find your name. All right, I just put in your name. 1 second. Unmute. Mute. Oh, where is that? Sorry. Wait a little, Brian. You're not being heard. Just 1 second.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. If I might, I'm sorry if the earlier caller asked the question, I lost part of it. But I just wanted to quickly respond to Cecile Clayton, who asked, how can we respond to the argument that Cubans are trafficking in humans, which to me is a gaslighting argument, frankly, because the Cuban doctors who come here are not paid properly by the Cuban governments. So somehow this is a form of trafficking, right? I think the way we can respond is by calling on the tens of thousands of Jamaican people who have interacted with Cuban doctors and nurses across the Caribbean, from Guyana all the way through Barbados, well, not so much Barbados, but many other parts of the Caribbean, and Dominica, St. Lucia, and ask them what they think about these people. Interview them, talk them, put them on talk shows. This is just a ridiculous argument. And I don't have any time for these people hanging out in Miami, whose only purpose is to go back to Cuba, turn it back into an American neocolony, and oppress Black people in Cuba.
Okay, two hands are up. We're gonna go to Seymour. Yeah, I'm not sure if your last name is not fully visible, but Seymour, go ahead.
Yes, good evening. Good
Go ahead.
evening. I
Good evening.
I listened to your comments. I appreciate everything you said. I think Canada is actually trying to help Cuba with oil. I saw that today. And Canada has stood up well to that man next door to him. But the comment I have is that we in Jamaica here, I'm in Jamaica. We in Jamaica here, our government is very dishonorable. We are in the habit of repatriating Haitians who come here as, whether they're economic migrants or they're refugees, we have not tried to find out. We just send them back en masse. When the slaves ran away to Haiti during slavery, the Haitians refused to send them back here. They didn't send them back. We are very dishonorable in Jamaica at the moment. We have turned our backs on Cuba. We have turned our back on Haiti, and we are trying our very best to be in America's pockets. And America, there's not a pocket to be in, because any minute they just open it and spew you out. We have a very terrible system, a very terrible government in Jamaica, unprincipled. And when the Guardian newspaper has to write in England that Jamaica used to be a beacon for human rights, commenting on how we could not vote on the Palestine thing when it came up in the UN last year. It's a terrible, terrible system we have here in Jamaica. Terrible system. Those are my comments.
Thank you.
Seymour.
Thank you, Seymour.
Thanks for that comment on Canada. I hope that works out to be something. But I think we have to start look at it more from the level of the people. The more I think about it, the more people have. You see, like how we organize to help our communities when they're in trouble. Um, Let us organize to help Cuba. Like let us say Cuba this is like a mega hurricane or a mega earthquake, worse in scale than the Haitian earthquake. How can we help them? What are the ways communities can help? What can communities give? From food to clothes, to any help that is forthcoming. We're 90 miles away from Cienfuegos on the south coast, less than 90 miles too. And you're going about and overnight you're there. I know. So we have to do better than this.
Okay, let us go to Agostino.
Before we go to
Hi,
Agostino.
thank you so much. Good evening, Brian. Excellent
Wait.
presentation.
Agostino, just a moment before you go. We are completely out of time for the meeting. I think it's appropriate for a motion.
Mr. President, please. We have to finish this.
Yes, and that's why I'm going to ask for the motion to extend time for the meeting.
Okay. I so move.
So I was saying, Brian, thank you so much for this
No, we
excellent
didn't
talk.
we didn't get a second though.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Agostino?
Right, so third time is the charm. So thank you so much for this excellent talk. I'm interested though in whether or not you could comment on the situation with Trinidad, particularly Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa and her role in the capture of Nicolas Maduro. She was, really at the UN. I think this was in December or January, I'm not sure. I think this was last year actually, and she was really praising Marco Rubio and how excellent his presentation was, and was essentially really gave Trinidad's coastal waters and just about everything else, give the U.S. access to, to basically kidnap Maduro. And I'd be interested to have you perhaps comment on that. Thinking as well that today at CARICOM, I understand that our Prime Minister said that Jamaica should effectively take a sort of mediator's role between the Caribbean and the US in terms of representing a coherent and fluent policy on Cuba. But at the time, Jamaica was the chair of CARICOM and they were quite silent when all of this was going down. So I'd be interested in your reaction to that.
Well, let me start with Prasad Bisesar. I think that she is going to be confined to the dustbin of history for her approach to this entire episode. One would think that coming from a place like Trinidad and Tobago, which has a glorious history of standing on certain basic anti-colonial principles, that she will perhaps have a chance to reflect on this and look at where she's going in the future. But history is going to be not kind to her when this story is fully told. And we don't know all the details yet, but the little pieces that we do know, it is a sordid, sordid moment in the history of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. In relation to Jamaica, I can't say, being an interlocutor or an intermediary could be all kinds of things. It could be a cop-out as much as it could be a real way to move things forward. Let's take the most generous approach to this and say that there is always a role for an interlocutor at moments of crisis. And if we can play a role genuinely to lead to an end to the blockade, you can't compromise on that. You can't interlocutor and the blockade continues. No, the blockade is illegal and it is wrong. And okay, you may not want to use my words, but find the words necessary for us to end it. But frankly, if that is a cop-out, then we'll know pretty soon.
But at the time, Jamaica was the chair of CARICOM, as far as I understand. So it's quite convenient. The position has shifted so much now that Maduro is in custody in the US, and they didn't do anything at the time to speak up in the way that the Prime Minister seems to be representing himself in the meeting today.
Well, you've said it better than me.
Okay,
All right,
thank
well,
you.
thank you very much.
I think, ladies and gentlemen, I don't see any hands up right now, so I think that Brian, I'd like to, someone has been designated to do a thank you, because
No,
really,
Before you go,
I've
Albert
been there
raised
for a
hand
long
before.
while, Chairman.
sorry, I didn't, maybe I didn't move my cursor to just see if there was another. What's your name?
Albert.
Okay, Albert. Yes.
Questions are also in the chat. Questions
night,
are in
Brian.
the chat.
Good
Okay.
evening.
Go ahead, Albert.
Good evening, Brian.
Good evening.
Good evening, Brian. I look at you and I remember in the 70s, always around you. And what I can say is that Jamaica is poorer for people like you that migrate and leave us, because there's no voice like yours in Jamaica now to guide the younger people. And I'm saying that my heart bleeds when I realize the benefit that poor people in this country get from Cuba, both in athletics, just about in all the field, Brian.
Absolutely.
And we are ready, but there's absolutely no leadership to guide some of us who want to make our contribution. Some of us have been doing our thing privately, but I think that leadership to mobilize us, because without Cuba, the amount of blind people that will be in Jamaica is unbelievable. And we boast about our athletic without thinking about the school that Cuba, the amount of things that Cuba has done for us. We are extremely ungrateful because there's no leadership.
Okay.
I can't speak on that question, but I can say that there's a lot more that needs to be done. There's a lot more that needs to be done, but thank you.
Okay, let's get in the last couple of questions and then we can wrap. Paul?
Please, there are some questions in the chat.
I cannot focus on the chat.
Okay.
If you want to ask, because I've seen some long questions, I can't read them all.
Yeah.
So if there were short questions, I could recognize it as a question.
Okay,
So
may I go ahead and pose my question? May I go ahead and pose my question?
Sorry, I already asked Paul to go ahead. He's already speaking. So let you can.
Yes, good evening. Good evening.
Somebody has another open mic.
I'm going to turn around. We'll just turn around.
Yeah, thanks for that presentation. The question I'm
sorry, who is this?
Yeah, people who just decide. Yes. Let me tell you where it's up in Avondale and them places.
Somebody is speaking
the
who is
houses
not
remain empty. The people are there.
Okay. I can't tell which one. This is what led to me.
Why? Because a lot of the houses are built by people from England who have died.
Whoever is
Seymour
speaking.
Stewart. Seymour Stewart is the problem.
Okay, let me find.
Please mute Seymour Stewart.
Hold on.
Jeez.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah,
Go
my
ahead,
question, which I posed in the chat was, if we help Cuba as a country or CARICOM on a whole, aren't we setting up ourselves for sanctions from the US, for crippling sanctions at too?
Yes, and the question is, the only way we can approach this is in a united way. We need to work together, right? We need to work together. The stronger we are, the more we are together, the more we work as a unit, the less chance we have of that intervening, of that happening. But look, life is not easy, it's not easy. There are risks to be taken in life. I don't know how we can live with isolating ourselves from our closest neighbor, closing our eyes, digging a hole in the sand, and pretending that if we don't say anything and we keep quiet, that coward man will keep sowing bone. I don't think we'll keep sowing bone because they're coming for us next. So I just say we have to find the wherewithal and the means, but and risks will have to be taken from time to time. But the alternative is not to hide or to pretend or to deny the decades of assistance that the Cubans have given us when they could not afford it, when they could have spent every penny that the Cubans have spent on educating poor people's children from the Caribbean and from Africa. They could have been spent helping build their economy stronger. But they understood the importance of solidarity.
Okay, thanks for that. We're going to just take the questions that are up. We're not going to take any more after that. So, Donna, I think you're next. Donna Mattis, you're next. I think you had asked before. Okay, let's move on to Peter. There's a Peter, I think. Singh?
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm looking at how does our position in the Caribbean, Jamaica, and even Cuba, how does it benefit us to support, and I'm saying this ambiguously, how does it benefit us to support a Cuba, a US, a China, or Russia in the geopolitics and what's going on globally? Because with technology and what's going on, how would it benefit us as a nation, not even Jamaica, as Caribbean, to what's happening? Because we're in the Western Hemisphere, we see what they're doing, like Russia and the Ukraine, and what they're doing in the East, and the US is trying to do the same thing in the Western Hemisphere. And we, as a smaller country, how does it benefit us to position ourselves politically with nothing against Cuba, but to support these?
I think we got your question. Let Dr. Meeks respond.
The question I have to throw back at you is, what is the alternative? How do we exist in the world if we don't develop connections, trade, movement of people. I can tell you, for example, how we have benefited from Cuba, right? Tremendously, right? Tremendously. And we have listed many of the things already. That is how we have benefited from Cuba, right? Because we have a good, but we have also benefited from our relationship with the United States, where I happen to live right now, where a significant part of our Jamaican population resides. Canada, the United Kingdom, the world is an interdependent place, and that is what we should build: friendship, relationships, solidarity. But when we see a country moving to literally starve another country to death, that is when you get it. Nobody's asking you or anybody to have the same philosophy as Cuba or whatever. You don't starve a country to death. And that is the point at which you find the means to help in whatever way is possible. And you don't think about benefit.
Okay. Please, somebody has some TV on or something. 2 to go, and that's it. The next, Donna, I don't know if you're there now. I called on you before.
Yes, sorry. My mic wouldn't unmute.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, first Venezuela, or maybe first Haiti, then Venezuela. A lot of people, certainly the man in the street, was looking for Russia or China to help. So is it that this whole idea of a multipolar new world order is a distant dream? The small countries like ourselves really need that support, and as I said, a lot of people were looking to Russia or China to do something. Where exactly is it? A multipolar world or a multi-pillar world that we're moving towards?
My own view on that is in the making, because of course what I can tell you is we're in a very fluid moment. The old world is disappearing. The old world is disappearing, and of course that world up until 1990 was defined by the Cold War. After that, it was purportedly U.S. hegemony. Since then, it is in a process of dissolution, and what we're seeing is not quite yet clear. What is apparent is that if Trump and the United States want their way, they want to return to a world in which they control this hemisphere in a way in which none of the small states have sovereignty in a meaningful sense. And I question the extent to which we ever had sovereignty, but think of the difference between at least the framework that we have now, which is not really much, and what existed in Haiti between 1915 and 1934, where US Marines ran the country in a racist way, because most of them came from the South anyway and were practicing Jim Crow in Haiti. Think about that kind of world, and that is a world in which the US dominates the hemisphere. If we don't want that world, then we have to struggle for a different kind of world. A world closer to the one that was emerging after 1945, after the defeat of Hitler, after the end of British colonialism and French colonialism, where possibilities for a different way were on the table. And we have to think about how we can move towards a place where we don't want to rule anybody, but we just want to be able to have sovereignty over our world. And I see our world as a Caribbean world.
And the final question, Sheila. That's the last question.
Good evening. Professor Meeks, I just wonder if you have any information on the supposed talks that are supposed to be going on between Cuba and the US in Mexico. Do you have any information at all on that?
I only hear whispers too. No, I don't have any secrets.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And since our president is now back, I'll hand over back to President Zuri, and DP Rupert is down for the thank you.
Thank you, DP Stewart. So to do the official vote of thanks, DP Rupert Whitaker, I'll now hand over to him.
Thank you, Prez. I'm glad I'm not in Rhode Island. I'm glad I'm not on the east side of Providence. I'm glad I'm not up at College Hill. Prof, I'm glad I'm here, but I'm sorry for you. I hope you adjust to the 4 feet of snow on the outside. I've been following the weather reports, having lived not too far from there for a number of years, and I hope you cope. But tonight, boy, I've heard you over the years, and I've always wondered, just like someone asked, what would Jamaica have been if you stayed here? I'm just echoing on one of your articles you wrote years ago about Stewart, not DP Stewart. What if Stewart had stayed in Jamaica and in the Caribbean rather than going to England? But man, you did us not only proud tonight, but you have one amazing way of just showing what's happening. You never prepare your speech or your notes the way that you probably would have. But I'm glad you didn't. We are glad you didn't. You spoke, and we could hear it in your voice. You spoke from your heart, and yeah, as a Caribbean person, especially as a Jamaican person, it comes over to us that you're as much concerned about our 2 nearest neighbors, Cuba and Haiti, like many of us are. Some of us have relatives still in Cuba, and it burns us to see and to hear what's happening. You have given us tonight an amazing call to conscience, the historical picture that you have painted to us, which have impacted what's happening today in Cuba and Haiti especially, seem to be drawing from us a response. And I hope we will respond. Tonight we had people from all over, from the US, from throughout the Caribbean, Barbados and St. Lucia and other places. And I hope that we heard your call, because it came from your heart. Thanks for your voice. Thanks for the knowledge that you have and the information that you shared. We wish you warmth in your work. I'm still trying to read some of them, Doc. You have done so much. Still trying to read some of them. On behalf of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston, on behalf of all 200, almost 250 of us who were on tonight, from throughout the Caribbean, as I said earlier, from North America, South America. I know there may be some that I didn't even recognize. On behalf of all of us, we just want to say thanks. The Kiwanis Club of Kingston has a certificate of appreciation for you. I hope they can buy my airfare so that I come. I'll take it up. I went to a school just up from you there, Doc, and I know in October we usually have our homecoming. So if they can purchase my ticket, I'll be glad to accept it and take the certificate for you. And Prez, help me out now. I'll take it. Thank you, Doc. All the best to you.
All the best.
Good.
All the best. Thank you.
Thank you, DP Rupert. We have heard you. I will put it to the board, but I would not encourage you to hold
How
on
can we
to
get a
that.
copy of the program?
Our meetings are recorded and they are available on our YouTube page. So you can go to our YouTube page shortly after this, and the recording of this evening's meeting will be there for you.
Thank you. Big up, Professor Meeks.
Big up. Big up.
All right, thank you. So now I'm going to hand over
Now let's go save Cuba.
Okay, we're back to the meeting time now. The regular agenda.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to hand over to Secretary Dale G. Willie for notices and announcements and interclubbing opportunities.
Thank you, President Zuri. In respect to notices and announcements, Kiwanis, you remember that this week is Billers Club Week. Began on Monday and it finishes on the 27th. There are a number of activities. We're hoping that all our Kiwanian advisors attached to Billers Club will get involved. K-Kids and Billers Club Rally is on Saturday, March the 14th in Hope Gardens. Key Club Jamaica District Convention is at Monee Teachers College from April 9th to 13th. Early bird is 18,000, regular is 20,000. On a note, our second quarter divisional council meeting is going to be held on Sunday, March the 28th. The venue to be announced. And in respect to upcoming fundraising efforts, our proposed National Dance Theatre Company benefit performance together with the Kiwanis Club of West St. Andrew is at the Little Theatre on Saturday, July the 18th at 8 p.m. And somebody just asked me to announce Kiwanis Club of West St. Andrew will be having their fish fry on March 27th on Chelsea Avenue. Cost is $2,800 for early registration or early payment of tickets, and $3,000 on the day. That is Kiwanis Club of West St. Andrew Fish Fry. In respect to interclubbing opportunities, as usual, I'll announce those in the morning. But however, Kiwanis Club of Kingston will be having a meeting tomorrow in celebration of Jamaica Day and Reggae Month, called Rhythm and Resilience. We're hoping to put together a little interclub and visit our daughters. For now, those are all the announcements and interclub opportunities. President, you may ask any member in the audience if they have any other announcements. You may please do so now. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you, dear G. Willie. But before I do that, just a slight correction. The Builders Club rally will be at Hope United Church, not Hope Gardens. All right, so to all the persons on the platform, if there is anyone who have any notice that they would want to bring our attention to, I'm going to give you the opportunity now to do so. Going once.
Good night, everyone. Are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you. Go ahead.
The Kiwanis Club of Trafalgar will be having our Shades of Africa event tomorrow at 7 p.m. at the Arden High Auditorium. Cost is $1,000 for 50-50 and admission. There will be prizes and surprises. Come in your African attire. You might just win the top prize. There will also be an exhibition from Stage of Africa. That's an African apparel company. So come on out. We're expecting a lot of support from you guys. Tonight was an excellent meeting, by the way. Kudos. I look forward to having a part 2. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you too. Any other one on the call who would like to share any upcoming event with us? Going twice. Going 3 times. Opportunity gone until.
President, let me just mention. I'm gonna put it in a flyer in our group, but the Central Portmore, Kiwanis Club of Central Portmore. Their meeting tomorrow is on AI. And so I think maybe those who might be very interested in that area might want to attend. So I just thought I'd put that plug in.
Okay. All right. Thank you, DP Stu.
Yeah.
So we have had much thought this evening, so I'm going to ask you to reflect on the things, and if you have not remembered everything that was said, remember that the recording of this meeting will be made available on our YouTube page, so you can go and rewatch. So with that said, I'm going to invite you all to raise your glasses with me. Real, imaginary, figurative, whatever glass you choose to raise this evening in honor of Kiwanis International and the Jamaica land we love. Cheers. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at the Kiwanis Club of Kingston. We usually stay behind after the meeting, so you are welcome to join us where we continue the conversation and listen to some music as well.
Okay, bye all.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Thank you.
Bye-bye, Speed. Take care. Good to be in touch with you.
Yeah, man. Great.
Absolutely. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, guys.
DP Stewart.
Yes.
Why were you called Speed?
Oh no, it's not Speed. Yeah, all right, since it's Speed, right? My name at high school was Flash.
Oh.
But what Brian was referring to is Speed. When you grow up, most people who name Spencer, they call him Speed. So Earl was Speed, but it's not only us. Most people who are named Spencer, they end up calling them Speed. So that is how Brian. That's the connection with Brian.
It sounded like Speed. S-P-E-E-D. Yeah. Okay.
No, there's no D on that one.
All right. Good.
Flip the music. Ay, na 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 na. I don't know to treat me, or do you for me? I never think say me they go there show a lie. I don't show a come on one mama falling. I me this I am falling. Tell me more, boko slow down, babe come closer. I could show you love or do. Tell me more, boko slow down, babe come closer. I could show you love or do. Tell me more, what do you? I'm not you waiting, tell me more, what do you? I'm not you waiting, tell me more, what do you? I'm not you waiting, I could show you love or do.
You don't know that Jimmy, or the police are Jimmy. Me man no bribe, I want you, see what you love Jimmy. Or don't you let me know to have fun and journey. Me best I will be a better day, I know my love. Hold me close to you, son of my son, to order, minimum of the me. Baby, make me your favorite person. I don't know my teacher, my audition. Yeah. Baby, I'm not do it, dear, me no won't come up. Yantin fi free. This is my life for you. Baby, I'm not do it, dear, man. I'm coming, show me. I adore you. I'm not do it, dear, I can show you love. Make sure we take it time, baby. Yeah.
me swiping photos of you. What on that me? I need a tattoo with your name on it. Metro Dean Kwame. Hey, a tough girl, I see the way I make timid. Boko me do it, to me mu Ediana wo peki babo tofe. My folly and kasa, Cheno Gam Pata. Se ujami ya me ubu ba mesaya baba.
Well, now